Assalamu alaikum. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin with the session 4 of the regional dialogue. We will start by playing a video statement by the Assistant Director General and Food and Agriculture Organization's regional representative for Asia and the Pacific, Mr. John Jinkim.
Regional Studies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. It is my great pleasure to speak to you on behalf of Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations at this regional dialogue to explore pathways to shape South Asia's resilience to the global climate crisis. This dialogue is important given South Asia's high vulnerability to climate change. Three South Asian countries are among by climate change during the last 2 decades, while another two were among the top 10 affected in 2019. Not only in South Asia, but across Asia and the Pacific. SDG 13 on climate action is regressing, primarily due to increased climate-related disaster fatalities and economic losses, and the widening gap in climate change mitigation and adaptation efforts in the region. Agriculture and food security are severely affected and the most threatened. The 2022 historical floods in Pakistan caused $30 billion in economic loss. And about 70% of these losses were in agriculture. With substantial losses in a range of crops and the deaths of about 1.2 million livestock and the estimated additional 7.6 million people were facing food insecurity following the disaster. According to the UNESCO, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, and Pakistan are among the 15 countries in Asia and the Pacific with the highest average annual loss as a percentage of GDP on the current climate change scenario and the 1.5 degree and the 2 degrees Celsius warming scenarios. So this dialogue is timely. Indeed, in just a few weeks from now, at the 37th Asia-Pacific Regional Conference in Sri Lanka, ministers from around the region will also discuss building resilience through the transformation of agri-food systems to be more resilient and sustainable. In this context, and to contribute to the dialogue, allow me to share a few thoughts. There are good opportunities for countries to put agri-food systems transformation at the heart of climate action to achieve both resilience and climate change mitigation targets. The national pathway for food system transformation and the renewed commitments made at the Global Stocktaking Moment Plus 2 permanently prioritize resilience building, highlighting the importance of nature-positive production and reducing food loss and waste. COP28, with the UAE Declaration on Sustainable Agriculture, Resilient Food System, and Climate Action, and the establishment of Loss and Damage Fund, are providing opportunities for new partnerships with FAO and others. This leads to collaboration and finance to accelerate actions. Strengthening coherence of national policies, multi-sectoral coordination, and integrated planning will be key in optimizing these global initiatives and delivering on national commitments. Ladies and gentlemen, considering all dimensions of risks and adopting a system approach are critical to address the drivers of risk in the agricultural system. For example, better agricultural production that is free of deforestation, land and soil degradation, conserves biodiversity, and the use of water more wisely. This will help reduce risks of disasters such as landslides, floods, droughts, pests, and diseases. Last but not least is innovative finance. The call for blended finance, mobilizing private sector investment in climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction, particularly in agriculture, has become urgent given the public debt crisis in many countries in the region. Initiatives such as a financial facility to support sustainable rice landscape or a food security green bond that FAO is exploring, together with IFIs and the private sector, could provide solutions. Building resilience to climate change and other disasters and crises in our region is perhaps the greatest challenge, not only in Asia, but the whole Asia and the Pacific region. Agricultural systems transformation plays a key role in tackling this challenge, and it requires innovative thinking, knowledge sharing, and collaborative efforts, which are well expected from this event. FAO will always be a partner, working for better production, better nutrition, and better environment, and ultimately a better life for all, leaving no one behind. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This session will examine how the region can adapt in the era of climate calamity, assessing our lifestyles and behavior, as well as adaptation strategies through climate smart agriculture and alternate energy resources are a step in the right direction. The speakers will focus on awareness and behavioral transformation, climate and food security, climate smart agriculture, alternate sources of energy. I now request the chair of the session, Mr. Bilal Anwar, to kindly proceed to the stage. I also request the speakers to take their seats. I now request the session chair to give his introductory remarks and take over the proceedings of the session from here. I would like to remind and request everyone to please keep their phones on silent mode during the session. Thank you.
Bismillah Rahman. Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me and the RMF to this extremely important and immensely informative and timely session today. Since this is happening in the countries of South Asia, and South Asia has evolved to become one of the flashpoint of the world in terms of the climate change, the impacts, the adversities, and the real kind of impacts the populations and the communities are facing. We know that as compared to the global average mean temperature rise, South Asia is suffering with an increase of 0.75%, and which on a comparable basis might not be too high, because there are regions of the world which are suffering much higher average temperature increase than 0.225 degrees centigrade. But the region has, of course, its own peculiarities, and it is one of the highly urbanized region. At the same time, it has some of the biggest economies of the world as well, and the youth population. And this is also the region which is have one of the highest energy consumption patterns as well. So these are all in the context. These are all the drivers for the climate change, and we are seeing those kind of impacts in the region, in the South Asian region. Now, 0.75% increase, actually, it becomes extremely important as well in the context of adaptation. It provides an opportunity for adaptation and faster rate of adaptation. At the same time, we know that it becomes extremely complex as well in terms of adapting to the calamities and to the disasters which the region is facing. In the last couple of decades, we know that the region has suffered with many large-scale and high-impact disasters and calamities. More than 730,000 people, million people actually have faced one or other type of the climate-induced disaster in the last couple of decades. And we also know from the statistics that more than 230,000 people have died since 1990 in the South Asian region. Well, the situation becomes even more serious and critical when we contextualize it in the context of our own country here in Pakistan. We know from the studies, Pakistan is one of the most vulnerable at-risk country of the region. At the same time, it has its own complexities to the adaptation needs as well. We also know from global studies and the regional assessments that there might be the window for adaptation might be actually closing as well soon. So there are limitations which the societies like Pakistan and many other societies in the South Asian regions, they have those kind of limitations and complications. But with the new realities, economic realities, social realities, and financial and fiscal realities, we know that limitations are becoming a lot more severe and a lot more critical. Now, I think this is a very brief kind of a context which we all are facing in the region, and we have seen in the last in 2022 floods in Pakistan in a kind of in a very serious manner from the floods, and which basically reminds us very starkly that the adaptation need to be taken extremely seriously. So I think this is what we are going to be discussing, which we are going to be unpacking and exploring in this particular session today. I'm very pleased to have, first of all, the range of the topics which we are covering, and especially in the context of adaptation. These are all very important. We're talking about the energy and alternative sources of energy, agriculture, food security, and an extremely important as well about the awareness and the transformational behavior, which of course are also important. One of the key elements which is becoming very important in the kind of a new studies and the new areas is whether we have been able to communicate on climate change in an effective manner or not. I think this is a very hot topic right now, because if it is a threat of such a scale, then why we are not really seeing the corresponding action, whether at a global level or at the national level or at the community level as well. So I think this is an opportunity just to kind of have a kind of a reflection whether the communication part and the behavior part has been effective so far, and if not, what kind of changes we need to make. But then adaptation is a very hardcore science as well. It needs to make some transformational changes and adapt the societies and the communities and the sectors and the themes with the evolving changes. This is what we are going to be talking, and I'm sure that all the participants which we have today, they are experts in their own areas, and they'll be sharing a wealth of knowledge and experience and expertise, not only from Pakistan, but from the other regions of the world as well, where they have been working. So I'm very happy to see Dr. Sobia Becker, who is a climate advisor, Climate German Climate and Energy Partnership. And we have Arif Gohij Sahab, who is a principal scientific officer at Global Change Impact Study Center, which is part of the Ministry of Climate Change. I'm not sure whether we have Professor J. Ram at online or not. Do we have it? Because it's part of the list here. But we have Abdul Sladi Saab, who's also an expert in his own field and in his own area. So let me start the discussion with Sulari Saab. And uh, Dr. Saab, you have that kind of an opportunity to look the climate change from a very economic aspect of it, because you have been writing extensively and you've been contributing through different areas, both at the economic side as well as at the climate change side as well. Now, in this context, in specific context of Pakistan, but also if you can share from your regional experience as well, how you see the economic development and the role for adaptation, whether it's going to be complementing each other, or with the growth in economic growth, which we are all aspiring for Pakistan, we need to readjust our economies and adapt our economies in a way that we become more climate safe and climate proof. And how do you see this from your perspective?
Well, thank you, Bilal. First of all, my gratitude to Ambassador Saab and IRS for having this special discussion on climate change and its different aspects this year. Very commendable step. Now, Bilal, I wish if the equation that you mentioned, it was that simple. Unfortunately, it's not. We often say we are talking of luxury versus survival. We are talking of hungry today or hotter tomorrow. And these choices, these are very subjective choices. So some action that we will be discussing here, and we will be giving it as a policy recommendation, that can be a survival issue for many. And that would be perceived as a luxury for others. Similarly, when we keep on warning about 1.5 degrees Celsius, 2 degrees Celsius, 2.5 degrees Celsius, there will be the choices that we will have to make. Either we want to, and not we, I mean, talking of South Asia, generally at a global level, because the choices would be, are we preferring hunger today? Are we, and we want to sacrifice it for whatever temperature it goes, or in order to avoid and save ourselves from that hotter temperature, we want to sacrifice. But then we have to maintain a balance and a win-win situation. And that's where a topic, multi-dimensional topic like climate change, that really becomes difficult to handle. So when we're talking of climate change, we're talking of the concept of circular economy that in South Asia was there for last many decades, if not century. So most of us who are in my age bracket, they would recall we used to go for shopping to get milk or curd or yogurt, taking some utensil from our houses. We used to have those cloth bags and do our grocery, etc. as a child. So this circular economy concept is there. Then we are talking of energy transition, the dirty fuel versus green fuel. Then we are talking of financing, climate financing. Then we are talking of innovation. Then we are talking of food system. And all of them, they are gelled together in this concept of climate change. And each one of them, they have their economic implications, negative or positive, but there are economic implications. And the public policy choices that we'll be making, and I often say that there is never a good or bad policy. I can argue that even worst of the worst policy, there would be some beneficiaries of that policy. And in best of the best policy, there would be some losers. So while we are talking of all these choices, the objective is to maximize the beneficiaries and to minimize the number of people who would be losing out on opportunities. And I think that's where we have to maintain a delicate balance between economy and climate change. But I'll conclude with the sentence that very often the focus on climate change is not due to the existential threat. It's not due to the survival threats. It's due to the economy. So when we get alert about the El Nino effect and the last 2022's floods, the number that matter is $30 billion. So Pakistan had to face cumulative loss of $30 billion. And that is the headline which sensitizes the policymaker. That is the headline that sensitizes other people. When we are talking about the transition from winter to these heat waves in Pakistan and how it would be affecting our mango crop or how it would be affecting our other crops. So that is the economic number that matters. When we are talking that November and December, they are going dry. So we are not talking about that there is no rain. The worry is that the wheat crop, which is the staple crop, is getting affected very badly because of no rain in November and December. Pakistan perhaps is risking for not achieving its wheat yield target. So it's the economic number that then give more importance to climate change. That is, I think, perhaps an angle which then compels us to change our behaviors and to increase its awareness.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Salih Saab. I've been informed that instead of Professor Jairam, we have Dr. Haseeb Irfanullah online with us. Welcome, Dr. Saab. I hope and expect that you can hear us. So a very quick question to Dr. Haseeb. At an abstract level, we know that adaptation has been or is a part of human civilization or nature of the human civilization and humans. The human civilization have been adapting to all kinds of changes, and we know this from the history as well. Now, I would like you to just kind of share a little bit and shed some light on it. You know, in the result of the climate change or the recent changes in the climate change, what has special or particular it has infused into it that the economies, communities, civilization as a whole is really at a difficult stage to adapt to it. So I think this is a slightly theoretical question, but I want to have a little bit of kind of a historical context to it.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for IRS for inviting me to be part of this regional dialogue and conference. I'm supposed to talk about climate and food security, but to start off with your question, I think coming from Bangladesh, by the way, I'm based in Dhaka, Bangladesh. I work in the areas of climate change, biodiversity conservation, and nature-based solutions. I think you are absolutely right. We are fighting or we are trying to adapt to climate change or any natural hazards, or not even natural, man-made ones. But I think the main issue we are talking about is attribution, because disaster science has always been there. We are trying to manage disaster. But when we started talking about attribution of climate change to all the things we have been facing, that make things difficult, that actually help making us to think differently. That's why the frequency, the intensity, and the numbers Dr. Abid actually mentioned, these are becoming so much important. Shall I go on and share my thoughts on food security?
Please, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. So if we take agri-food system or food security as an example to explore the whole thing a bit more, how adapting to climate calamities. Yes, we know agri-food system is one of the biggest contributor to climate change. I mean, due to climate carbon emission. Over the last 20 years, the carbon emission from agri-food system actually rose by 9%, which is 16 billion metric ton of carbon dioxide. But it is also the most severely affected sector as well. For example, over the last 30 years, since we are talking about climate change over the world, almost $4 trillion of actually crop loss or livestock loss happened. And if we count or calculate it as a kind of an annual damage, it could be $123 billion per year. Amazing. It is 5% of agricultural GDP. So we can understand the fathom of it, at least partly. But since in this session, we are talking about how to adapt, how to make our thinking, prioritization, attitude towards those difficulties. What are the behavioral changes we can bring in our policies, in our practice? I would like to, over the next 7-8 minutes, I would like to touch upon 6 specific points. First, I think we need to look into agri-food system and the food security as a whole to understand food security as a whole. The agri-food system is not only a natural resource management just to feed the people. We need to think it as a social ecological system because it has an ecological component in it. So when we talk about risk level, we shouldn't only think of societal systems risk level, considering vulnerability, hazard, and exposure. We need to think of the ecological aspect of it. That's my first proposition. The second thing is, if we do have that kind of understanding, obviously we will be taking adaptation actions, but we have seen that we are facing adaptation constraints, not only financial, but also technological. That's why we see the gap between where we want to go and where we are. As a result, we can see adaptation limits. That brings in my second point, which is losses and damages we are now encountering. What is happening in Pakistan, Bangladesh, all over the world, flood, drought, you just name it. But my argument would be, yes, we need to put number on those disasters or those events, but we shouldn't only focus on economic aspect of it. Non-economic aspects should be focused on as well when we talk about agri-food system as well as food security. The social cohesion of the farming community, the traditional indigenous knowledge in the agri-food system, the agro-biodiversity, the non-market aspects, the cultural heritage aspects, these are being affected due to climate change in the agricultural sector. We need to appreciate that. Often we forget about our agricultural workers, their physical, mental, emotional health. These are being affected. So my second proposition is losses and damage should be seen not only through economic lens, but also non-economic lens. My third point is when we want to build a resilient system, especially in agricultural sector, we can't shy away from thinking of the overall system, not only climate action, but the whole system need to be resilient. And to make the whole system resilient, we need to make the system inclusive, bringing in gender dimension, youth dimension, marginalized community, indigenous community, disabled population, everything should be bring in. And to make such a system, I would like to propose 7 specific dimensions to look into: representation, participation, skills and capacity, accessibility, financial resources. That might come after the lunch session as well, because climate finance is a big issue. And the 6th point or 6th dimension would be knowledge system. I will bring it again later on, as well as innovation. When I say innovation, I don't only mean technological innovation, but also financial system. We have already heard about it in the opening remark from our guest. The 4th point I would like to focus on in food security or agri-food system, we need to focus not only rural, but also urban food system. And it is because not only that urban population is increasing, but also the number of urban poor is also increasing, who are actually living in informal settlement. And the other aspect is due to climate change, people are migrating. So those displaced population who are coming to the urban hubs, how we can engage them in agri-food system, we need to look into and think of that as well. My 5th point is, since the resources are limited, we need to think of co-benefit as well. I'm now bringing in the concept of nature-based solutions. I think yesterday there was a session where ecosystem was touched upon. But if we include nature-based solution, when we promote adaptation or resilience in agri-food system, it can bring in fantastic co-benefit, not only biodiversity benefit, ecological benefit, but also social benefit. And FAO's recent study actually showed that when we do or take that kind of approaches, our actually benefit cost increases manifold. During disaster situation, that benefit cost ratio could be 3.7. And during non-disaster period, it could be even 4.5. So it is fantastic. Now, my sixth and last point is, since we are talking about regional dimensions of climate crisis, I think one of the ways to finish this conference or dialogue, regional dialogue, would be, can we, at the regional level, not as a whole, but sectoral basis, can we create community of practice or community of interest to share information, to share knowledge, but also facilitate cooperation and collaboration to create knowledge, generate knowledge. But we shouldn't stop just by creating knowledge. We need to take that knowledge to action. So I'm focusing on inclusive knowledge mobilization as well. So that's all from me. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts. I will be staying back if there is any question, because there is a Q&A session as well. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Saab. Continuing on agriculture and food security, Bohir Saab. So you've been working in agriculture sector and many others for a long period of time and producing some good research work. Now, when we say climate smart agriculture, and in the specific context of Pakistan, we know that the kind of changes and the transformation in the agriculture sector which we need to bring in. And to enhance the understanding of audience, so we are talking about quite a large scale, quite advanced level of R&D work and technological transformation if we really want our agriculture, our food security sector to be aligned and to be proved against the fast approaching climatic changes. So where we are in this race, specifically in Pakistan, and this becomes very, very critical question because we know that we have a very fast growing population, and at the same time, the demographic propositions and the conditions of the communities and the society is changing, which basically, of course, have impact on the food patterns and the behaviors as well. So this becomes quite cumbersome and quite complex equation when we're talking about climate smart agriculture. It's not only something which is coming out of the field, but it actually goes all the way along in the value chain system of agriculture sector. So how would you define this? How would you explain this?
Thank you very much, Bilal sir. And I'm very much thankful to IRS Ambassador Nadeem Vyas sir and his team for successfully organizing this event. Bilal sir, you're very right. The situation of Pakistan's agriculture in particular and of South Asia's agriculture in general is very pathetic. Let me place before you some of the figures. We are a region where most of the population is engaged in agriculture. We are a region where 91% of the water resources are deployed for agriculture. We are the region where most of the people who are malnourished or undernourished prevailing over here. The state of the soil, which provide base to the agriculture, are deteriorating. So under this context, the situation is very gloomy. If we look into the perspective of the climate change, what's going to happen with us? It's more gloomy. South Asia is one of the regions that will be having more increase in temperature as compared with the global average. This is the region where the water resources will be depleting at a faster rate and it is at the verge of the drought and water scarcity. If I talk about Pakistan, Pakistan's situation is that we are having still 22 million hectare of land under agriculture. In the last 22 years, I have not seen any increase in agriculture area. We are utilizer of 93% of the water, but 37% of the population is still food insecure. We have put many efforts in enhancing the productivity of the agriculture. We have make a maximum use of our land resources, putting more and more and more fertilizer into it, but we have not been able to achieve the landmark of the food security in a single day history of Pakistan. Agriculture is to provide food security. Agriculture is to provide the better nutrition, and agriculture is to provide better environment. And we all at all these three fronts are failed. If we look at the climate change scenarios and future impacts on agriculture, GCISE studies say that by the end of 2050, our wheat yields will decline to the tune of 16%. Rice yields will decrease by 20-25%. Cotton will be declining at 40-45%, and maize will be declined at 39%. So these are the statistics before us. The attribution is to increasing population, change in dietary habits, as well as the figures I have placed before we about the climate change. So under this context, our agriculture is surviving. In the aftermath of 2022 flood, as Abasulari Saab has mentioned, we are further down in terms of the food security, food insecurity. There are micronutrient deficiencies in the children, which are hardly to overcome with the increase in food security levels. If I talk about the solutions, what is at the table, how we are proceeding with, there are a number of varieties we produce every year. With the advent of the biotechnology and other innovations, we have been able to develop the varieties in a shorter period of time. We are developing varieties, but their uptake in the farmer fields is very low, very slow. As compared to the neighboring countries, our per acre yields are very low. In wheat, in sugarcane, in rice. And the more problematic thing that I'm going to mention over here, since I have been asked about the climate smart agriculture, which revolves around three pillars: food security, adaptation, as well as the mitigation from agriculture. Pakistan is one of the countries wherein the greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture are highest, even highest than energy sector. Couple of years back, the equation was energy, agriculture, and then after sectors. And now it is agriculture at the foremost, and then after it, energy and other sectors. As per our greenhouse gas inventories that we have prepared, the greenhouse gas emissions, agriculture contributes to 46%. We have emissions from methanogenesis, livestock. We have I think the fifth or fourth largest livestock in the world, but it's mostly redundant. Methane emissions are more, but the per capita, per animal productivity in terms of meat and milk is very, very less. We have the methanogenesis from rice. We produce rice from 3 million hectares of land, and rice emissions are more. All or most of the rice is grown under submerged conditions. The technologies are there. Dry seeding technology is there. Alternate wetting and dry technologies are there. but these technologies are not imbibed in the field. Crop residue burning is still part of the problem. We have not made ourselves, our farmers, aware of the harmful effects of the crop residue burning. Fertilizer. We provide massive subsidies to the farming community on fertilizers, but we have never trained them in the effective use of fertilizers. It is said that 60% of the nitrogen that we provide to the crops goes wasted. Either it's leached down or volatilized into the air. We talk about the provision of water to the farmer. And in this context, we have a solar fuel policy which promotes extraction of water from the soil. But we are a water efficient country too. But we have never trained our farmers on the water use efficiency aspects. We have never trained them in the zero-tiller technology, mulching, alternate wetting and drying. There are many technologies that reside with the agriculture research institutions, but their adoption into the farmers' fields is still very limited. We have not worked on the small scale farmer holders, which makes major part of our agriculture system. Still, when I started my university career, there was a debate on the cropping systems in Pakistan. We are less in water, but our cropping systems are more water demanding. We grow rice, we grow sugarcane, and we in these 30 years have not been able to reach at a consensus how our cropping systems should be. So the technologies are there, but the uptake of these technologies is in the farmer fields is very limited. Government needs to work, private sector must be encouraged to reach out to the farmers with these available technologies so that not only the food security should be enhanced, but also the food security production should be aligned with the low carbon emission technology. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Arif Saab. Indeed, Pakistan's agriculture sector actually is plagued with a number of paradoxes. We know that more than 40% of our children are facing the stunted growth due to the low nutrition, and many of them actually have quite a high percentage of it non-availability of the food to those populations. Another which you highlighted our GHG emissions, especially from the agriculture sector, are the highest, and without we having been able to meet our minimum food security levels. So I think that's a very good question, which we should be asking ourselves, and the policymakers should be asking is that as every government should be aspiring for the food security, the minimum levels of the food security, the impact is going to have over emission levels. So I think this is something which needs to be seen unless there are transformative changes, there are drastic movement towards the technologies which you are and the practices which you are referring here. So yeah, there are a number of paradoxes in the agriculture sector which need to be addressed and addressed soon. Now, let me turn to Dr. Sobhya Baker, who is looking after the energy and alternative sources of energy in Pakistan, which of course is a very important pillar of this climate, energy, food security nexus as well. And we know that Pakistan in the last 15 or 20 years, our generation capacity, at least the installed generation capacity, have gone tremendously up. And we are able to meet not the 100% demand, but quite a substantial part of it. But the shift towards alternative or renewable sources of energy has not been extremely remarkable. Although we have in our NDCs a very clear commitment for 50% for coming out of the energy, alternative sources of energy. But what we have seen is not much of the movement has really started towards that direction. So it's still a very long way to go. So in this context, Dr. Sobia, my question to you would be that what are the impediments, what are the blockages or the challenges which you're seeing in Pakistan in a shift towards renewable sources of energy? And although we are globally still less than 1% of emission contributors, but with the economic growth which we are aspiring for, I think this is going to become quite an increase in the coming years and the decades. So what are the impediments? What are the challenges you are seeing, and how your own program is actually working with the government to overcome these challenges? Thank you.
Thank you. I would also like to compliment the IRS for bringing together this August gathering. That's a very critical question, and of course it has many dimensions. I'd like to cover some key elements of this question, but let me add one more figure to the sobering figures that that Arif just shared with us. According to the NDC, as you quoted, energy is one of the 5 key sectors that Pakistan also reports against. And based on the business as usual scenario of 2015, the energy sector emissions are set to grow by almost 400% till 2030. The last NDC didn't present any updated figures, but taking the very first NDC that Pakistan had submitted, this is the type of growth in emissions that we're looking at. So as you very rightly said, although Pakistan may be a very small emitter when you look at historical emissions, but I would say it's on a very healthy trajectory as far as emissions growth takes place, and it's important to address that. I think what is also a critical element that is often missing in the debate is we talk about emissions or the climate change impacts that Pakistan is seeing because of historical emissions. Yes, adaptation is critical because adaptation addresses the baked-in emissions that are present in systems around us. But mitigation is also extremely critical because you need to address the emissions of tomorrow. And this is what Pakistan will reel from maybe sooner than later. We need $101 billion for the energy transition, as the government of Pakistan has also said. For a country that has tremendous potential for renewable energy, we have not been capitalizing on that as to the pace that we probably need to. And there are a couple of reasons for that. And let me break this up in the very classical, the 2 dimensions. One is obviously the policy perspective, and the second one is more the economic case for alternate and renewable energy. So from a policy perspective, there are a number of issues that are slowing down the uptake of renewables. And the primary amongst these is the constant discussions that we have on finding appropriate tariffs for renewable energy, whether these are pricing structures, economic structures to attract investment, or these are attractive economic business cases for the private sector to deploy renewables and to take these up. And these must be addressed. Every year we have long-standing discussions, and by we, I refer to the government of Pakistan and the relevant energy sector stakeholders on, for example, the IGCEP and what's going to happen. So there's still not enough understanding about what the IGCEP actually is, what the policy measures in place are that needs to be unpacked and well understood. And these barriers to foreign direct investment, and these need to be addressed very quickly. Coming to the economic case for scaling up renewables in the country, I just mentioned foreign direct investment. It would be ideal to have a very simplified process, a kind of almost a one-window approach to bringing in investment in the country. There is a great deal of interest in investment, But till the policy and the regulatory, the legal environment is one which we would then call an enabling environment, this is not going to happen. And there are some cases, some investments that have been waiting for years to be realized, but unfortunately, that has not been the case. Another very important aspect is, and this is also something that we discussed at length last night at the working dinner, is you cannot overlook the captive sources of finance that you have also domestically. And this is a position that nobody is really coming to, because when you think of renewable energy, one tends to think of either development partners or internationals, but not all of the money in the world that we have is enough for addressing climate change mitigation and impacts, not enough public finance. Private finance needs to come in. There is enough private finance in the country where investors, industrialists would like to, because they need reliable sources of energy, they would like to leverage these opportunities, but they are somehow unable to. So the economic case on the one hand applies to obviously the more large scale installations that we're thinking of, but also when you look at perhaps the micro or the meso level, the private sector, mutual funds in Pakistan, other sources of sustainable finance also have a role to play in that. And one must understand, how do you make the business case? Coming to the business case, there is, I feel, not enough discussion about stranded assets in the country. There continue to be investments and scaling up investments in, for example, thermal power plants, coal-fired power plants, but nobody is really discussing the very large and imminent risk of stranded assets. What are you going to do then? Leave aside the climate justice issues of what coal-fired power plants are doing in communities by poisoning their groundwater tables and, destroying communities. But this stranded asset discussion is an important one, and business cases need to be outlined to help investors understand where they can direct or redirect their investments towards more sustainable sources. What is very clear is that there's not enough discussion on energy efficiency. But before I move on to the last element of my discussion, Arif made another incredibly important point, and this is the burning of crop residue. This is, again, policies that are not coherent, they're not cogent, because the farmers are obliged to burn crop residue. If they do not, they are faced with heavy fines. Farmers sometimes don't have the wherewithal to clear their agricultural fields quickly. And this, again, personal opinion, but as you can probably tell, I feel quite passionately about this. But burning crop residue is akin to throwing away gold. It's akin to burning rupee notes. You might as well do that, because this crop residue is actually a very valuable source. It's a new renewable source of energy. You can convert them into pellets, and they would serve as feedstock for different industrial processes. And these are not difficult to do. It's as simple as, for example, in a cluster of sugarcane industries, you set up one cluster facility, make the pellets, use that instead of all of us suffering because of poor air quality, And these are the type of things that one can really think of. And then finally, to round off my input, I would say that it is always going to be much, much cheaper to save 1 megawatt of energy than it is to produce it. And energy efficiency is incredibly important. So not enough attention has been paid to that, but it's usually, if you think of the progression, then energy efficiency measures can be complemented by, either alternate renewable sources of energy, but energy efficiency is important and cannot be overlooked. I'll pause there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Sovia. Very rightly, some of the aspects you mentioned, whether it's a residual burning or it's energy efficiency or conservation, and several others. I mean, these are behavioral traits, and which of course are extremely important, and they become even more important in a debate for adaptation. Adaptation is all about behavior, the life choices, and the decision making which we make at individual level, at a society level, at a national level, and since this is a regional dialogue, even at a regional level as well. So that's how important it is. And we are not really seeing those kind of behavior shifts. We're not making those kind of the kind of decision making or the choices which we should be in the face of the challenges and the threats and the hazards which we are facing. I would like to just ask the last question to coming back to Abul Sladi Saab, since he has this kind of a comfort of working with the government and the people at the policy level. So the question is, what are the behavior changes we want to see at the decision-making level, and in terms of for moving ahead with the adaptation measures and the adaptation debate in a wholesome manner?
Well, thank you, Bilal. You see, when we are talking of behavioral changes for adaptation and mitigation at individual level, as I said, it's quite easy. When I would find the petrol and diesel prices are going up, if I could afford, I'll switch to hybrid, or I'll switch to electrical vehicle, or I'll start using public transport. When I'll see that electricity tariff is increasing, if I can afford, I will have a solar panel. So at individual level, these economic choices, more or less, they dictate our decision. At state level, I think the things are slightly different. And I often see that, I think that why during COVID, whole of the world united to save the humanity from this pandemic. Countries, they simply doled out trillions of dollars as economic stimulus, and we cannot do it for climate change. And the answer that I get, and I may be wrong, that in COVID, we were very clear that no one is safe until everyone is safe. So if I was given the choice to get vaccinated, it was not that I would only think of myself and my immediate family member. I'll also think of all the residents who were there in my house, either the domestic service provider or others, because I know that if they are not safe, my family is not going to be safe. So all of them, they have to get vaccinated. Unfortunately, in case of climate change, we are still not able to realize the fact that no one is safe until everyone is safe. So we feel that if my house, my city, my country, we can cope with it, we can spend on mitigation, we can spend on adaptation. So rest of the world, they can do whatever they can do. And I think that is an important point that we have to keep in mind. And when we're talking of awareness raising, we need to take this analogy, and we need to say that for the safety and survival of humanity, we need to work collectively. Now, I can see that countries, they can compete with each other in order to develop technologies, in order to innovate, in order to adapt, but then they have to talk to each other, and they have to cooperate with each other so that these technologies, they can be multiplied, and they can be, and we also know that what works and what didn't work. The second important point that I would like to see in regional decision making, as a region, we need to get out of this victimhood thinking. We keep on saying, for example, Pakistan only contributes 1% of the total CO2 emission. And then we very conveniently ignore, or we don't know that this 1% emission is higher than 179 or 180 other countries of the world. So this 1% places us somewhere around 20th or 21st most CO2 emitting country. This victimhood mentality is not only prevailing in Pakistan, it's in the region, and as a region, the decision maker, they need to see that what is it that they can correct. The second, the same victimhood mentality that haunts our climate financing efforts. Climate financing, by definition, any fund which is spent to tackle climate change is climate financing. Now, for example, Pakistan. $30 billion was the need assessment. Okay, it may be exaggerated. Slash it by 50%, $15 billion. What is it that we got from Geneva Convention? Till today, it's not $1 billion. Government could spend whatever. Now, if you look at the state of rehabilitation, almost 80% of the flood survivors, they have got rehabilitated and they have spent finances on it. So it means that without realizing, without calculating, even if it was not $15 billion, make it $5 billion. So communities, they have spent $5 billion on their rehabilitation, and we need to make a baseline of it. So I had a cow, I sold it, and I repaired my rooftop. He had some saving for daughter's wedding. He sold it, she sold it, and they bought two cows or two buffaloes to revive their livelihood. So people, they do spend. Similarly, if you make an inventory of all the solar panels that are got installed in Pakistan during last 3 years, it's all climate financing. So those who could afford, they have got those solar panels installed, they have spent on it. Those who could afford, they have bought these hybrid vehicles. That is climate financing. So STPI, actually, we are working on it. And we are trying to make a baseline of at some back of the envelope numbers. What is it that Pakistan has contributed towards climate financing through indigenous resources? And that would then actually strengthen my negotiation power. When I'll be sitting on a table on negotiation, I'll tell that, look, we have spent $5 billion on flood rehabilitation from our indigenous resources. And now we want 10 billion or 15 billion extra resources, rather than I go approaching my counterpart and telling them that, yes, we are victim, we have lost everything, and please help us. So that this donor fatigue and development partner fatigue, that would not take us anywhere. And this is, I think, the second behavioral change I would like to see in our decision makers. The third very important change that I would like to see, we have a tendency to blame others for our own created problem. I know smog is not climate change, but just take the example of smog. Anyone who can guess what was which was the most polluted, bad air quality city in Pakistan yesterday? It was Haripur. Today, any guess? It's Rawalpindi, right? So today it's Rawalpindi. Yesterday it was Haripur. Day before yesterday it was Haripur. Today, if you look at the real-time data at 12 p.m., US Air Quality Index, it's Rawalpindi with 382 air quality index, Islamabad 269, Haripur 266, Peshawar 263, Karachi 250, Lahore 192. So the point I'm trying to make, yes, crop burning is a very important issue, but then we also need to know, so is stone crushing. We also need to understand, so is industrial emission, so is vehicular emission, so is all the construction that is going on. So, and all of it is actually contributing towards air quality. So, yes, we do need to, again, think what works, what didn't work, and how we can collectively take care of these things across borders. But we also need to understand that just finding a scapegoat for all of our problems externally, that won't take us anywhere. And it's not only Pakistan. India is doing the same. Bangladesh is doing the same. So we love to actually put the blame of our problems to our neighbors. And I think that is another behavioral change I would like to see happening. Still another behavioral change that I want to see is just energy transition. So we have mentioned about it. We need to learn from South Africa and Indonesia. South Africa in 2026 and Indonesia in 2027 very successfully negotiated phasing out of their coal-based power plant, and the EU and other developing countries, they offered them the amount for this transition. Now, instead of defending my coal-based power plant, and when I say my, it's South Asia. So India is always put this break and hurdle whenever the word phasing out of coal-based power plant is used. So instead of defending coal-based power plant, we need to again make a case, and we need, just like South Africa and Indonesia, and we, in case of Pakistan, we need to calculate some numbers. Sahiwal coal-based power plant, if I phase out today, the IPP, they will take me to International Court of Arbitration. So this is the cost of litigation. This is the cost that I would have to pay in compensation. This is the cost I need in order to transit from coal to any other renewable energy source. And then I can make a business case, get it negotiated, 60%, 70%, 80%. This is what you can contribute, and this is what I will contribute. And I'm happy to phase it out. So I think this sort of homework is required. So climate change, another aspect of it, it is not only technical problem, it's also diplomatic problem. And in negotiation and diplomacy, who knows better than Ambassador Nadeem, it's the homework that matters. So if we have our homework right, we can take care of this problem. And the last, very last point is, yes, we know SAARC is defunct, but then there is this intergovernmental body which is existent, and we need to make the most use of it. And I'm referring to SASAP. SASAP is South Asia Cooperative for Environment. It's an intergovernmental body. Its secretariat is in Sri Lanka, not in India or in Pakistan. And that works very closely with UNEP, that works very closely with other UN agencies. So I think our regional problems of environment and climate change, they need to be discussed, and they need to be tackled through SASAP. SASAP actually played a major role in Malé Declaration, the Clean Air Declaration. So it was the product of SASAP. And even today, we can take care of this SASAP. And very final point, domestic choices. So we mentioned about renewable energy. Again, it's an economy. If I'm a power secretary, I'll be very happy to see my renewable energy share increasing. If I'm a finance secretary, I will have nightmares. I have to pay capacity payment charges to IPPs with whom I have done this take or pay agreement. So if most of my customers, consumer, they will shift off grid, that means that government of Pakistan will have to pay more to those IPPs for not buying electricity from them. So there is this policy conundrum in Pakistan when we talk of renewable energy, and that is haunting us. 2 years ago, any domestic consumer who had it, his or her solar this system could sell 1 unit to through reverse meter, could send 1 unit to the NTDC and get 1 unit free. Today, if you send 4 units to NTDC, you will get 1 unit free. And if this capacity payment charges issue is not tackled, and I hope I'm wrong, I wish I'm wrong, but there can be a point where a consumer will have to pay to the NTDC for using the infrastructure, for using the reverse meter. The same like cable operator, they were providing the service, and then at some point of time, the distribution companies started asking them to pay the charges for using the infrastructure. So it is again economy. And the Bilal, your first question, that how it is affecting our choices. So we have to make very careful choices. We have to assess and weigh our choices, and we have to actually take well-informed decision. So when we know that we are dependent on LNG for our energy production, how could we sign methane emission reduction this treaty in Glasgow in 2026? So LNG is your methane. So if you don't have an alternative to LNG, if you don't have an alternative to thermal power generation, signing on a methane emission reduction agreement, that was again a decision which was taken in isolation. So I'm not taking doubting an intention of decision makers. All I'm trying to say that they have to take a holistic picture. Climate change is a multidimensional, multifaceted problem. So one ministry, one individual, one government, one department cannot tackle it unless and until we have a holistic view and we start taking decisions in consultation, be it a domestic level or it is a regional or international level. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Slurry sir. Made some very interesting, very pertinent points, and which are very critical in the present context of not only in Pakistan but in the region as well. Your point, especially related to COVID, I think that's very, very important one, because COVID shattered and challenged our understandings and our long held perceptions very badly, and we came to the understanding that when there is an existential threat, the global community, they do come forward, they do come together to address it. We know that within the US, 6 trillion were mobilized in a matter of days and disbursed in a matter of hours. And so this is what is called. But in the case of climate change, we have not really gone to the level. It hasn't evolved to the level where this kind of global action has been triggered. So thank you very much. Thank you. I think we heard from all the speakers across the board, and for all the different aspects and dimensions which are very directly intersects to the issue of adaptation for climate change. We have a little bit of time, maybe 5, 7, 8, 10 minutes for Q&A. Apologies for my not exactly a perfect kind of a moderation to manage the time, but I think the debate and the discussion was going very healthy and very interesting. So this is a compromise which I had to make, and I use my authority and powers to make that compromise. But the floor is open to questions, please. Do we have a microphone or something? Yeah.
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम, मेरा नाम तैयब मजीद है, मैं पार्लियामेंट्री प्रोफेशनल हूँ पार्लियामेंट हाउस से। सबसे पहले क्वेश्चन है ऑनरेबल पैनल, सुलेरी साहब इनके आर्टिकल पढ़ते हैं, सर आपको भी पढ़ते हैं और मैडम और आपको, ये जो इन्वायरमेंटल चेंज है ये नेचुरल है। इसकी एग्जांपल मैं सेम वीक में कराची से इस्लामाबाद 2 इम्पैक्ट देखे अपनी बॉडी पे। आई हैव टू सबमिट माय बॉडी इन हॉस्पिटल इमरजेंसी, ठीक है जी, मुझे इंजेक्शन लगे, गोलियां लगी। मैं पूछना ये चाह रहा हूँ, ये हम थ्योरीज पढ़ लेते हैं, लेकिन इसका जो इम्पैक्ट है एज इंडिविजुअल मैं कैसे चेंज कर सकता हूँ? इस्लामाबाद का आप देख सकते हैं, इधर 28 सेंटीग्रेड है इंटरनल, बाहर जाएंगे 14 होगा, बॉडी पे शेक आएंगे। तो जितनी भी मिनिस्ट्रीज है, पार्लियामेंट हाउस में मैं खुद बैठता हूँ, प्राइम मिनिस्टर ऑफिस बैठता हूँ, एक स्पेसिफाइड टेम्परेचर है 22, 24, गर्मियां हो या सर्दियां, मेरी बॉडी उसमें इम्पैक्ट हो गई है, मैं तेज टेम्परेचर या लो टेम्परेचर में मैं डिस्टर्ब होता हूँ। ये एक तो सर से मैं इसलिए रिक्वेस्ट करता हूँ, ये प्राइम मिनिस्टर लेवल पे बैठते हैं, सर साहब इस चीज को किसी आर्टिकल की शक्ल में लेके आए। दूसरी ये चीज के एज ए इंडिविजुअल हमारी टेम्परेचर डिफरेंस आता है बॉडी पे बहुत ज्यादा, इसके लिए हम कैसे खुद को हेल्दी रख सकते हैं? हमारा क्या एज ए इंडिविजुअल कैपेसिटी, मैं एक आम इंसान हूँ, मैं कैसे रोल अदा कर सकता हूँ कि मौसम में तब्दीली का पॉजिटिव नतीजा दे सकूँ?
Thank you very much, Ji. Let me collect a couple of questions, please.
Ji, thank you. I am Sardar Sajjad, the CEO of Tech GIS Private Limited, a company providing geospatial solutions. My question will refer to Arif Saab and also Dr. Saab. Pakistan has about 47% of the total land mass comprised of agriculture. which is quite a good percentage as per the global average of 38%. But as you mentioned about the reduction in the per acreage yield, as well as the depleting water resources, the brightest option could be to opt for the precision agricultural techniques. Precision agricultural techniques. Now, I just want to know, since you're moving into the different circles related with the policy making also, are we sensitized well about this aspect of precision agriculture techniques at the policy level as well as the operational level? Number two portion of this would be that even if you agree that precision agricultural techniques could be one of the brightest option to opt for, what could be the business model for a land mass where majority of the farmers, like about, I think 80% of the farmers have the holding of less than 12 acres. Thank you.
Thank you. We take one more. And then, okay, maybe we should create some balance from this left side as well.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Wareed Liaquat. I'm working with an NGO called Human Development Foundation. So my question is to Ms. Sobia. We've seen the fossil fuel interests take over COP agenda and be part of climate negotiations on the world stage. So my question is, how much of a fossil fuel lobby exists in Pakistan, and to what extent does it impede transition towards renewable energy?
Thank you very much. So we have three questions. One is for Sobia, which is about the potential for transition to energy. The other one is both from, I think it's more related to Dr. Saab online as well, but Arif Saab as well, which is about the landmass and the level of sensitization or the understanding for the resilience kind of practices, and then the business model which is required for this. Your point is taken note of about the comfort level of temperature, but then you had a question as well for Salari Saab as well. Sobia, can we start from you?
Order of the questions. I'd like to thank the colleague from HDF. That's a very interesting question. At the very heart of the issue, this is a very simple economics related dilemma. It's about supply and demand. If there's no demand, lobbies, the influence of lobbies is obviously going to weaken over time. So I'm not going to delve into the political issues or go into, the extent of influence lobbyists, hydrocarbon lobbyists might carry in Pakistan, because this is not my domain. But what I can ask is, and I think this also relates a little bit to the first question, is when keeping the supply and demand paradigm in question, how much are you willing to create that shift and move away from the influence of fossil fuels in your own individual sphere? So the colleague rightly pointed out that it's 28 degrees right now. If it were cooler in the room, would you be happy? If we start to sweat even a little bit, we turn to, we like to crank the air conditioner up and make it much cooler, artificially cooler. So don't these all contribute to increasing demand and further strengthening the sale of fossil fuels in this country? And by that, indirect impact of that is the strengthening of fossil fuel lobbies in Pakistan. So I think it's all a question. We need, as Abid was saying, we need a behavior shift. And the question really is, in all of our personal capacities, how are we going to make that shift happen? Now, on the international stage, there are a number of things that are happening. There is a very clear commitment to divesting from fossil fuels, and this is already happening. You would have heard of the Net Zero Asset Alliance, Financial Assets Alliance. They're committed to phasing out. You have now the multilateral development banks who are also committed to a 6 building block system that allows them to align with Paris. All of this moves towards the energy transition and not financing it anymore. So obviously, these are things that we can do. Another very important element, again, relating to the very high degree of consumption that we have is, of course, single-use plastics or plastics in general. So if we go back to simpler, better times when all of us took our baskets and our own containers, how much of that would be reducing and how much of that would actually mean that there are fewer hydrocarbons in circulation in our societies? So there are a number of things that are happening that, there's a significant shift towards away from hydrocarbon. We talk about the energy transition and how we're going to enable that in the country. And these are the type of things to focus on and give importance to, so that we're opening more policy windows and we're opening more avenues for discussion and higher consciousness on the individual level and then also at the government level. Thank you.
Thank you, Vital. Thank you, a very good question. If you talk about the level of sensitization at the research level, it was quite a couple of years back. All the studies I mentioned here are the Pakistani produced studies. If you talk about the taking up of this sensitization in the government actions and policies, yes, it is vehemently very much there in the National Food Security Policy. Climate smart agriculture word is used 3 times, climate resilience 5 times, and precision agriculture multiple times. Same holds true for the provincial policies. But if you talk about their realization in the farmer fields, just a minor correction, 85% of the population is there who owns less than 12 acres of land in Pakistan. This is a difficult situation in Pakistan to work with for many of the operations to really embed into the farmer fields. Of course, the traditional model of the agriculture extension system has not worked well. This is very much clear. I have not worked practically with, nor I have heard about any sort of intervention of community system in Pakistan, small communities, which work for the farmers and they, as in the case of the neighboring countries like India. Maybe it can work well, or we can empower the intermediaries, the private business firms who sell the pesticides, agrochemicals, fertilizers. Maybe we can entrust these things to those people. We can empower them. We can make a framework for them so that they can better sensitize the farming communities. They can develop farmer field schools for that, so that the adaptation practices can be truly embedded into the agriculture system. That's my take on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dr. Irfan Hasibullah, sorry. Would you like to add from Bangladesh perspective?
I think I was just thank you very much. I was enjoying listening to our my fellow panelists, and I do understand and do believe that things are quite complicated, and we need to operate at different tiers very quickly. Now, I think we need to move away from talking about vulnerability to resilience when we talk about climate change, because that is not enough. We need to focus on prosperity. That is so important for us, the developing country. Bangladesh is still a least developed country. We hope that in a couple of years' time, we will become a lower middle income country. So we cannot, it is really difficult to convince us that you have to compromise your development for the sake of climate change mitigation. Those practicality, those complexity has to be taken into account. And of course, I very much appreciate, as all the panelists were talking about the regional cooperation, we need to find out new avenues. We shouldn't actually focus on the obsolete cooperation platforms. And that's all from me. And thanks once again for having me engaged in the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Larissa, would you like to comment the question on the healthy temperature?
Very briefly, you see, oil and gas are the fossil fuel. The bad news is that they are going to stay here for at least next 4 or 5 decades. We don't have any feasible alternative to switch to renewable unless and until there's a miracle in technology which overnight can take all of our infrastructure to the renewable. But the good news is that the genie of phasing out of fossil fuel is out of bottle, and there is no way it can go back now. Dubai, UAE government, they did their best to have a Dubai consensus, sacrificed on many of their stated positions that they have been taking in earlier COPs. Next COP is going to be in another petro state, Azerbaijan, Baku, and I can foresee some further advancement in it. And the proof of the pudding is that now the fossil fuel companies, even in Pakistan, very soon you will find that Oil and Gas Development Corporation would be Energy Development Corporation. So oil and gas world is being replaced by energy. You will not, even those of you who received the PSO's New Year souvenir this year on their diary, they had this green, grass, dried grass, which they have pasted on their PSO diary, and it is saying a vision for greener Pakistan state oil. So, and the future of the fuel of the future in next 2 to 3 decades, depending how quickly we have this technology, it would be nickel, it would be copper, it would be lithium. So now the energy companies, they would keep on doing what they have been doing, exploration and extraction, but not fossil fuel. They will gradually shift to nickel and copper and lithium. Even there are some successful experiments on sodium batteries as well, which are very heavy, can only be used perhaps in ship and large buses. But now the renewable energy, the next step would be where to store this energy. So the success of renewable energy depends on its storage, and storage depends on the type of batteries. And batteries depend on these green minerals. And green minerals, right now it's Indonesia, it's Australia, it's Brazil, Chile, Peru, etc., even some countries in Africa, which have already signed these long-term extraction agreements with Chinese companies so that they can come and they can extract these minerals from those countries. So that shift is going to happen due to economic reason, due to all the bashing that fossil fuels are taking, and due to this limit that fossil fuel can produce. The good news on precision agriculture, a lot is being done. It's being done in silos, for example, and I know it because I had this stint coordinating Prime Minister's Agriculture Transformation Plan. Most of the extension is now getting transferred to audiovisual techniques. So now my farmer, and there are dozens, if not hundreds of these startups which are providing these extension services. I can make a video call to their number. I can show them my crop, and the extension worker, they would immediately tell me which pesticide to use, which herbicide to use, whether I should give irrigation or not. So I'm no more dependent. Farmers, they are no more dependent on public sector extension services. They are now very soon with this smartphone and this broadband technology, they are shifting towards digitalization. And the same is happening in practical agriculture. NASTAP, the old Rawalpindi airport, is an excellent example where startups, they're working on the same technology which can detect land mine up to 3 meters below soil. The same technology can tell you the soil pH value. It can tell you the soil moisture content. It can tell you the soil type, loamy, clay, sandy. It can tell you which fertilizer to use. All you have to have is a multispectral sensor drone and a sensor which is installed in the land. And as I said, that practically work is being done on it. It's the matter of rolling it out. The final point is, if you go through SIFC, one of the areas of focus of SIFC is agriculture. So the agriculture is all about precision agriculture. And it would be a snowball effect. It would be the first only the progressive farmers or the corporate farmers would be using this technology, but it would have the same effect as we had seen in case of dish antennas, which at some point of time was a status symbol in Pakistan, the satellite antenna. And within 3 to 4 years, each and every dhaba had that locally manufactured dish antenna. So with technology, I'm very optimistic that this precision agriculture and the future of climate smart agriculture is actually precision agriculture and digitalized agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I was given a special permission to extend up to 1:40, and I'm literally a minute away from it. So I have to very smartly conclude this session. So let me try to do that. What we heard is, we live in an age of adaptation. Human civilization have always been in an age of adaptation. We have been adapting. Those who have not been adapting, they're not in the room, or they're not the part of the story today. And that basically tells us that how quickly and how smartly we have to adapt. We heard from agriculture, from energy, and the kind of the future fuels as well. Sulari Sahab gave us a time scale of 4 to 5 decades to coming out of the fossil fuel. I think that's an incredibly long period of time. We know what is killing us. We know what is threatening us. We have the technological solutions in most of the time. Some, of course, are going to be evolving. Concluding with the Ahmed Faraz Sher, कि कितना साथा तेरे हिजर में मरना जाना, फिर भी एक उम्र लगी जाते जाते. So it's still going to take us some time to adapt. So thank you very much. Thank you to all the presenters.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bilal, and all the participants and the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, concluding our thought-provoking fourth session, I would like to invite the chair and speakers for a group photo on the stage.